So the heart, the way I show the heart, like a square, we start with the square, and I will do this a lot. So on oxygenated side, always put right, and R. You know it's left side. So the left side, the entire left side, responsible for oxygenated side. But there is a constantly ratio between carbon dioxide and oxygen. When we say oxygenated side, there's more oxygen than carbon dioxide on this side. And when we say deoxygenated, there's more carbon dioxide, right, compared to oxygen. Here is more oxygen, and here is more carbon dioxide. Lungs are on the sides, right? Like for example, if I have a heart here, my lung would be there, like this, almost parallel to the heart. The way we show that it's easier for students to understand at the beginning, we show the lungs on top and heart here. But that's the real anatomy. That's the real physiology. That's exactly what happens here. Right? Like that. So we receive oxygen from both lungs. We receive oxygen from both lungs on the left side. This lung also gets here on the left side. So oxygenated blood from both lungs end up on the left side. Here we show it this way. Right? It's easier. From the atmosphere you get your oxygen into the lungs, you load oxygen onto the blood vessels, right, onto the red blood cell, and we bring it to the left side. So that's the left side. Right side we have deoxygenated blood, meaning the blood that returns to the heart from the system. From the system. From below the heart and from above the heart. So we return the blood into the right side, from below the heart and from above the heart and from the heart itself. So we bring oxygenated blood into the left side from both lungs, right? One lung here, one lung there. So basically you're returning here, not returning, you're bringing oxygenated blood, and then you return deoxygenated into the right side from below and from above. So the upper portion of the heart, responsible for getting blood into the heart simultaneously, the equal amount of blood goes on both sides. So there are 4 chambers. One chamber called left atrium, the right chamber here called right atrium. Then here at the bottom, left ventricle, and here right ventricle. So let's look at oxygenated side. So the blood from both lungs end up in the left atrium, then it passes into the left ventricle. Same thing happens on the right side. From the right atrium, blood passes into the right ventricle simultaneously. We should bring exactly the same volume of blood. Then all ventricles must contract and eject blood, remove blood from the heart, eject out, eject out. On the left side, just because we're getting oxygen, we want to feed this oxygen to the rest of the system. So when we eject the blood from the left ventricle, we eject it into the system above the heart and below the heart. On the right side, when the blood returns from the system and from above and below, we eject it back into the lung because we want to get rid of deoxygenated, right? We want to get rid of carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide travels here and up in the right ventricle, and you eject it back into the lungs. Heart, 4 chambers, left atrium, right atrium, right ventricle, left ventricle. Oxygenated blood from the lungs. Let's have 2 lungs, right? Both enter here. That's oxygen. You get oxygen from the atmosphere, right? get there. You're getting in the left ventricle, and you eject the blood in above the heart and into below the heart in all of the systems. So if this is the human, right? Here's the, let's say, here's the chest, right? Here's the heart, right? Like that. So when the blood would be ejected, it will go here and it will go there. So basically, here's the aorta going down, descending aorta, and the blood would feed all of the systems and go on the lower extremities. When we return blood from the system, deoxygenated carbon dioxide from above, also carbon dioxide, get here, and then you eject it into the lungs, right? You eject it into the lungs so you can get rid of carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere, and the same thing is here. You can eject it back into the atmosphere. Let's do this again. Heart. So if you want to show the flow of the blood, you can start from the oxygenated side or deoxygenated side. It's completely up to you. I like it from oxygenated. You go inside, you go out, you return, and you go out. Here, when we bring oxygen into the cell, we exchange oxygen with carbon dioxide. There's more complicated, it's not really like that. We'll discuss this later. So where you bring nutrients and oxygen, and through cellular respiration, you produce carbon dioxide. Here, for example. This represents all of the cells, all of the tissues in the human body. Let's do this again. Let's add something else here. Heart. 4 chambers. Now that you know the chambers and the basic flow, what we have here, the valves, right? There are 4 valves, 4 doors. We have valve here, and here. 4 valves. We have 2 valves on the sides and 2 valves in the middle. When we bring the blood, it passes from the right atrium, from the left. You always have to write it down because you constantly mess up. Left ventricle, I'm sorry, you see? Right ventricle and left ventricle. So the blood gets from left atrium to the left ventricle through a valve. The name for this valve is mitral valve. Another name for that mitral valve is bicuspid. Bicuspid valve because it has 2 shaped leaflets like that, right? Open and close. 2. Also, you can call this left atrioventricular. Atrioventricular, between atriums and ventricles. Atrioventricular valve. On the right side, instead of bicuspid, you have tricuspid. Tricuspid valve. Has 3 leaflets, like that. The view from the top. The view from the top on this one has only 2. Tricuspid valve or right atrioventricular valve, between atriums and ventricles. So you return the blood here, right? And passes through this valve, and that's how the blood ends up in these 2 chambers, ventricles. Then when you eject the blood, when the heart contracts, when the ventricles contract, you push the blood through these 2 other valves. These valves, we call them semilunar valves because they're shaped like that. Actually, they shape the other way, shaped like this. This pushes the blood or ejects the blood into the system, into the aorta. So here's a huge, thick aorta. So this one is called aortic valve. This one ejects the blood into the lungs, so it's called pulmonary valve. pulmonary valve. It goes into the pulmonary circuit. Here you go into the lungs, you go to the pulmonary circuit. Here you go into the system, it's called systemic circuit, but the valve is aortic valve and the pulmonary valve. Together, it's easier for us to call these two valves semi or semilunar valves, just because of the shape. Why they're this shape? Because when you're pushing the blood out, right here, due to gravity, right, so the blood gets out, it wants to go back. And when it goes back, it's being protected by this shape. Kind of similar happens here as well, but the opposite way. So it would shape like this. When the blood passes, it wants to go back. It's impossible because it will be closed like that. So valve will open and close, open and close. So it's harder for the blood to get out. So the four valves, together we call them AV valves. Instead of saying Mitchell valve or bicuspid valve or tricuspid, we say AV valves. And this we call semilunar valves, but they have names: aortic, pulmonary, tricuspid, bicuspid valve. Let's do this again. Heart. So when we bring the blood, and we just said it that we bring the blood together simultaneously on both sides, these two valves are open, these two valves are closed, right? You must keep these valves, semilunar valves, pulmonary valves, and aortic valve closed, because if they would be open, the blood will flow there. You want to create a pressure here. You want to create enough of pressure so you will generate enough force to eject the blood from the ventricles. So when the AV valves are open, semilunar valves are closed. As soon as we fill the ventricles with blood, now we can close these two AV valves. And for a certain period of time, all four valves are closed. And you're generating enough pressure here. Otherwise, if they would be open, or the blood will seep through regurgitation, so you would not be able to generate enough pressure here. So four valves are closed, and when there's a contraction and leads to ejection, these two valves give up because of the pressure. They will open, and we eject blood into the system through the aortic valve, through the huge thick aorta, and through pulmonary valve back into the pulmonary circuit, into the lungs, right? So these valves will open, but these valves will stay closed. Under the pressure, these two valves will close. So as soon as the blood will leave that, these valves will close. This will stay closed for a certain period of time, which is millisecond, because the entire cycle is 0.8 seconds. So as soon as the blood is ejected, those two will close. These two were closed, but now they must open, because you're waiting for another cycle for bringing blood inside again. So if you look at the cycle, it looks like this. Let's actually do the four cycles. So here's iso, volumetric relaxation. Relaxation, all four valves are closed. Heart relaxes. So the cycle is 0.8 seconds for the entire cycle, to get inside of the blood and leave the blood. But the heart is only working 0.4 seconds. So half of the time the heart is at rest. So this is isovolumetric relaxation. This would be the feeling, right? So you're feeling the blood inside. So this must be open, and this must be open, and these two closed. So AV valves are open, semilunar valves are closed. Then they must close, and this is the iso volumetric contraction. So relaxation, contraction. Contraction, but not ejection yet. So we generate enough pressure. We'll discuss conduction system next. So isovolumetric contraction. Then the pressure becomes great that it can open these two valves, and after contraction you have ejection. These two valves, AV valves, are closed and semilunar valves open, and you eject the blood into the system and into the pulmonary circuit, into the systemic circuit and the pulmonary circuit. These are the phases. So what happens is these two sides work simultaneously, but let's say on atriums and ventricles there's a slight delay. That's within conduction system. So when atriums contract, right, they are able to push the blood into the ventricles, and the ventricles are relaxed. When the atrium's relaxing, ventricles contracting. When the ventricles are relaxing, atrium's contracting. Works this way. So if you look at, I'm going to erase this. If you look at the conduction system, right, in the right atrium, that's where we have SA node, sinoatrial node. That's a pacemaker. That's a natural pacemaker that sets the rhythm of the heart. Sets the rhythm of the heart, sending electrical impulses. Sends the electrical impulse to AV node that's sitting somewhere here. Atrioventricular node. Sinoatrial node sets the pace. Let's say it's connected to sympathetic nervous system, which is autonomic, and integrates this. And there's also parasympathetic nervous system, also autonomic, that we have no control of that. Right? Also integrates SA node, and they're also connected to AV node. SA node, AV node, then there's a bundles, then there's a bundle branches, and then there's a Purkinje fibers. So that the electrical impulse passes from the base of the heart, this is the base of the heart, and this is the apex. If you look at the heart, apex here at the bottom, but the base is at the top. It's at the bottom because we generate more force at the bottom. Left ventricle is thicker muscle compared to other parts because it generates more force, but it ejects the same amount of blood. So between SA node and AV node there's a slight delay. This one sends electrical impulse, then this one sends electrical impulse further down. So blood flows naturally down the ventricles. Let's say 2/3 of the blood flows naturally, and then when the contraction happens, then the atriums contract and they push the rest of the blood into the ventricles, and all valves will close. Then the atriums relaxing and ventricles contracting, and then they will eject the blood. So if you look at in EKG electrocardiogram, you see P wave followed by QRS T wave. P, QRS, T. P represents atrium's depolarization, let's say contraction. Then you see this QRS. QRS, that's when the ventricles depolarizing, contracting. So once this contract, ventricles contract, atriums must relax. It shows somewhere here. We do not really see that. But the T represents ventricles repolarizing. When ventricles repolarizing, they relax, but they need to recharge. So they're relaxing while this would be contracting.